Hello chess friends and welcome to Out of Chess channel and welcome back to our commented chess games played by computer series. So in this series we're covering some great games that are played by top engines, and today I've prepared again a beautiful game played by the new Stockfish version, by the new Stockfish 15 engine against another top engine Koivisto. So this game is really special, I can promise you this, because in this game I think you witness one of the most brutal central PAWNSTORM that you've probably seen in your life, because in this game Stockfish will sacrifice a piece immediately in an early stage of the game and then will create really a central PAWNSTORM which Koivisto cannot handle then in the continuation of the game, and then eventually Stockfish will sacrifice even the rook for the exchange just in order to let this PAWNSTORM explode. So as I said, is what's one of the best games that I've seen by Stockfish 15 so far. And the cool part also about this game is a little bit that I've reached many times the same position in the closed Sicilian and played simply a different idea. I really didn't dare to play the sacrifice that I really wanted to show you in this closed Sicilian setups, because it seemed to me that it's really bad to go into the game like this. But as I said, I had really many times the chance to play the game like this, like Stockfish did, but really never dared to play it. And now I will probably apply this beautiful tactical shot in an early stage of the game if I reach, of course, the close it's in. And I think this game is really important for us to watch, because I think Stockfish and some other engines are, of course, changing a little bit also. The opening theory are changing also, some strategical ideas, in particular openings, in particular sidelines of openings. So as I said, here I think you witness now really some beautiful changes in the closed Sicilian setup. So let's see now the beautiful central PAWNSTORM play by the fish. So here I flipped the board because, as I said, I think you can really use the study here in order to have a great preparation in the closed Sicilian from black perspective, because I play the Sicilian myself. So here we have e4 by Koivisto, c5 by the fish, knight to c3. So it's already announcing here this move f4, then maybe d3 to go into this closed Sicilian setup. So we have here d6, we have a g3, we have a g6. So now Stockfish 15 is going into the dragon Sicilian structures with bishop to g7 and then knight to c6, knight to d4, controlling further this very important centralized square. So here in the continuation we have d3, bishop to g7, knight from g to e2. So I think we have reached many times a similar position, maybe not the same, but with the same strategical goal. So here we have knight to c6, bishop to g2, and here after move rook to b8, we're announcing here already a flank attack from black perspective, b5 and b4. And this is exactly how you should play the closed Sicilian. You should not wait, because the small pawn chain here, this pawn structure e7, d6 and c5 is already announcing that we should attack the here the queen side. This is now the small pawn chain, as I said, that's always showing us the direction of the attack. On the other hand, white small pawn chain c2, d3 and e4 is also announcing here a kingside attack. So that's why white is probably launch here an f4 attack, f5, e5 if possible, and similar stuff. So you should not forget about it, because sometimes we miss our main strategy, sometimes we miss also tempi. What I mean about this, we should be really fast. We should be really fast on that side where we're attacking. So that's why this move rook to b8 is, of course, a beautiful strategical idea. Kingside castling, we have b5 immediately by the fish, we have a3, and now after move knight to f6, we have reached now really one of the critical moments of the game. So here d4 played by Koivisto, which is perfectly fine. It's okay to attack the position like this, because black has castled, white has castled, black didn't castle. So there is, of course, the rules in chess which says when your opponent's king is still in the center, you should try to open the center. Okay, here in the continuation, Stockfish plays now kingside castling, and here comes, as I said, the critical moment of the game. It seemed to me many times that I should not castle here. I played, for instance, something like bishop to d7 and played a simply too passive move. You see now this move bishop to d7 I've played millions and millions of times, and it's really unnecessary to play the closed Sicilian like this. Actually, you can go here and go kingside castling, and this is now really some novelty in the closed Sicilian, because of course Koivisto plays now the move e5, attacks now the knight, but is also attacking the knight on c6, and it seems so in the beginning that something went wrong already for the Stockfish engine. Okay, let's see first this other continuation that we have to, I think, also analyze, because we want to see also other opportunities, because white doesn't have to play, of course, the game like this. White can also play d takes c5, but still I think after the d takes c5, bishop to e3, nothing special is going on here. Of course, if white trades off the queens, it's still nothing special for white. Then we can play knight to d7, and after something like f4, I think b4 is here perfectly fine. Then after something like knight to a4, in order to keep the pressure around the square c5, I think black can solve all of the positional problems with the move knight to b6, attacking also the knight which is controlling the b2 square. So okay, maybe black will lose a little bit here the battle around the square c5, but I think white could also lose a little bit the battle here around the square b2. So it's, I think, a great compensation here for black. So this would be a possible continuation after d takes c5. But now comes, as we said, the stunner e5, and as I said, it seemed to me in the beginning something is wrong here. Why is black playing the game like this? But now Stockfish simply takes out the pawn. We have d takes e5, we have bishop to c6, and now after c takes d4, Stockfish creates now brutal central pawns from for the piece. Okay, we have given up now the piece, but now it's really a weird position of the minor pieces of whites. White can now play many mistakes. For instance, the crucial mistake would be, of course, the move knight to b5, then queen to b6 is of course winning the game. You can maybe sacrifice back the piece with knight takes d4, but after e takes d4, nothing dramatically changed. I think bishop to g2, and now with rook to d8, I think it's a perfect position here for black. For instance, also the b2 is a little bit weak. We can also include many pieces into the attack. Bishop to g4, bishop to f5, attacking the c2 weakness. So as I said, in my opinion, black's activity is simply too much to handle here for white. So you could also try to escape with knight to b1. Here, let's go back. So after move d4, you could also try knight to b1, but it's again nothing better, because after bishop to f5, now the c2 becomes a clear target, and after bishop to g2, you see queen to c7 could be a problem. Now, for instance, even if you try to improve this pawn structure, now look at this with d3, the knight gets trapped on e2, which is really wild. So it's also something I think that we should know in these types of lines and also in these types of structures. So as we said, let's go back. After move c takes d4, this Koivisto engine has to play now knight to e4. This is now very important to recognize this move order. So after move knight to e4, Stockfish continues with bishop to f5. We have queen to d3. Notice now that the bishop is a little bit loose here on the board. So here in the continuation, we have king to h8, and now g4. This is now the only move that is prolonging the game for white, because you have to simply deflect one of these pieces, either the bishop or either the knight, from this brutal attack against the knight on e4. So we have here bishop to g4, we have knight to f6, and now very correct move, e takes f6. We should not take with the bishop, because it's very important to keep our pawn chain. It's very important to keep our central pawn storm that we have built in the beginning. We have to agree now with f5, with e4, with the d3, this pawn chain is moving on. So this is now really beautiful attacking formation by black. So okay, black is down still a piece, but has now this beautiful central pawn structure. So here in the continuation, we have c3. So of course, when you're now facing a position like this from white's perspective, you want to break the pawn chain, you want to let this position explode in the center, you want to simplify the game as much as you can, because this is something that you don't want to tolerate, of course. Here after move c3, bishop to f5, bishop to e4, bishop takes e4, but now the queen gets deflected to a square where we can attack it again with the pieces, with the pawns. And now after move e4, we have seen now queen to g3, but now with the move d3, look at the pawn structure that Stockfish built here. Really wild stuff. And look at this, 5 pawns here are building this very nice formation. This is now also a very supported pawn here on d3, and also what we have to say, the bishop is perfectly fine aiming here against the c3 weakness. We can also try some ideas of a5, b4 to break a little bit here, create maybe sort of a minority attack by creating a flank attack with these 2 pawns against these 3 pawns here on the queen side, and then get use of this very active bishop on g7. So this is now really wild position. So here in the continuation, after move knight to d4 was played by Koivisto. We have queen to d7, protecting now the b5 pawn, because what Stockfish is trying now to do is to play much more freely with the rooks. And I think it's very important to recognize this, because okay, this pawn is temporarily weakness, but now with rook to e8, maybe we could try some ideas, I don't know, maybe f6, g5, f4 and similar stuff. But we have to also then support our e4 pawn, because white could maybe counterplay with rook to e1. So this is now a crucial move that black of course wants to play, rook to e8. So here in the continuation, we have h4, rook to e8, we have bishop to f4, a5. So again, Stockfish is continuing also with this pawn majority attack, minority attack with his 2 pawns against 3 pawns. After move a5, we have rook from a to d1, and now h6. As we said, maybe trying some ideas of king to h7, f6, and then g5 to kick away this bishop from this very annoying square. So we have now bishop to e3. If you try now king to g2 or something, maybe to include the rook here on the h file, maybe try this kind of an attack, then as we said, b4 I think would be very annoying to handle. Look at this, the knight is also a little bit loose here on d4, so as I said, it would be, I think, an unpleasant game for white to play. So after a move, bishop to e3 was played by Koivisto. We have rook to e7, queen to h3, and now we have h5. So Stockfish is controlling further the light course. We have bishop to g5, and now comes the most beautiful move, I think, of this game. Stockfish plays simply rook to e8, rook from f to d8, sacrificing simply the rook for the exchange, which is really wild when you think about it harder. Now after move bishop to e7, rook to e7, okay, we have reached out this position in which, okay, Stockfish has now still here every 8 pawns on the board, but Koivisto has only 5 pawns on the board, but has also the extra rook. So I think it's really a position that we haven't seen many times in chess history. So let's see now how Stockfish continues with the pressure here with the stand for PAWNSTORM. So here after move rook takes e7, we have rook to e1. We have now b4, again with the same idea to attack this loose knight a little bit that's on d4. We have a takes b4, a takes b4, and now queen to e3, protecting everything. B takes c3, b takes c3, and now king to h7, of course, improving a little bit also the position of the king. So here in the continuation we have knight to f3, and here it seemed to me also when I analyzed the game that maybe Koivisto can save the day here with this move, because now the knight will be maneuvered to a very active square on g5. But Stockfish, you know how Stockfish calculates his position really in a beautiful way, simply plays now bishop to f6. We have this check, but now with king to g7, okay, the knight is perfectly fine here, but we have to also say the knight is stuck here. The knight will not be able to participate in the game now, and now notice now that also now the c3 is a much clear target that, of course, for black will attack this weakness immediately, and eventually I'm not seeing even good ways how white should protect the pawn on c3. So we have now c4. So Koivisto is trying to now at least to prolong this miserable life of this pawn here on c3. But here, even if you try f3, I've also analyzed this move. For instance, if you're trying to break this pawn chain finally, then of course bishop takes c3 happens, and then also bishop to d4 would be a serious threat. So as I said, this is something that bothers also white in the continuation of the game. So that's why at c4 we have queen to c7, simply attacking the pawn. We have queen to c1, bishop to d4, with the threat also to play queen to g3. It's also very important to know this, because you cannot take because of the bishop activity, then you could lose also the battle around the square f2. So here king to g2, that's why played by Koivisto. We have queen to c5, queen to f4, protecting now the f2 pawn, and now bishop to c3, rook to f1, and now after bishop to e5, queen to c1, bishop to c7. Now Stockfish is also trying to build maybe here a queen and bishop battery and create an annoying check here, or even maybe in checkmate on h2. So we have queen to e3, we have a queen to e5, rook to h1, we have f6 kicking with the knight, and now knight to f3 here. Koivisto try to simplify the game by trading off more pieces. Even if you try here knight to h3, then you face this one, f4, f3, and similar stuff. So you basically didn't solve any of your positional problems. So that's why Koivisto tried to simplify the game by trading off more pieces. That here after e takes f3, okay, here we could have this position, but notice now that in this scenario black would lose the PAWNSTORM that black has built in the continuation of the game. So now, okay, maybe this is very annoying to handle, but I think with this loose pawn on d3, eventually black will lose here the pawn on d3, and then I think white can defend its position, can also simplify the game by trading off more pieces. So this is something that black should not do. So that's why after move knight to f3, here we have queen to e6, we have knight to d2, we have f4. Stockfish continues now the pressure with his pawns, really beautiful moves. We have queen to h3, queen to g4. Look how Stockfish is trying again to connect more and more pawns, really wild stuff. So we have now queen to g4, after h takes g4, look at this now, 4 versus 1 pawn here on the king side. Really immortal gameplay by the fish. So rook from h to e1, we have f3, we have king to g1, and now f5. Look, every pawn is connected. I'm not seeing good ways how to defend this anymore. As I said, the white has an extra rook but cannot include any of these pieces. The knight is out here. Everything is really messed up. So we have here knight to b3, rook to e5, preventing also c5, because this could be maybe an idea to at least make this pawn roll. But here after move knight to c1, we have rook to c5, we have knight to d3 here. Finally Koivisto try to simplify the game. We have e takes d3. Koivisto had really enough of this pawn storm. Rook to d3, and now after rook takes c4, we have reached now a new position in which Stockfish has a bishop and 2 pawns for the rook, but still I really like now black's position more because of the fact that we can play f4, g3, we can connect these pawns. Also this pawn is a little bit weak. White cannot attack also black's king, because the king can always escape. So as I said, it's completely lost game I think here for white. So rook from e to d1, we have king to h6, rook to d4. Stockfish doesn't want to trade off the rook, wants to complicate the games further. So of course rook to c3, rook to d3, and Koivisto is desperately trying now to trade off the rook. So that's why rook to c6, where rook to d6 is not working, because the bishop is covering the square. So rook to d7, we have bishop to e5, rook to d5, bishop to b2, we have rook to d2, bishop to a3. So Stockfish is trying to search for new squares where it could maybe attack here the h4 pawn, but also here the f2 pawn. We have to say it's also a weakness, because if bishop on c5 happens, then also g3 is a huge positional problem for white. Then the f2 could be a loss. So we have rook to d7, bishop to c5. Now comes this idea. We have king to f1, bishop to b4, we have king to g1, rook to c2, and now after bishop to c5, again Stockfish found a beautiful way how to attack this weakness on f2. So that's why rook to d2, we have rook takes d2, we have rook takes d2, but now g3 is of course winning the game here for black. So we have rook to d3, bishop takes f2 comes with check, we have king to f1, and now the king comes into the game, and we're here with this move king to g4. The king is very active here. We have created now 3 connected pawns here, which is of course unstoppable here for white. So here in the continuation, rook to c3, f4, we have king to g2, bishop to d4 attacking the rook, we have rook to b3, bishop to f6 attacking now also this pawn, we have rook to d3, bishop takes h4, and now Stockfish has 3 connected pass pawns with the support of the bishop. It's game over for white. Rook to c3, bishop to f6, rook to d3, bishop to e5, we have g5, rook to a4. Here Stockfish simply pushes the pawn further. Now we have this one, and now you cannot prevent any check. Of course you can just prolong the game, but the main goal is of course a check and then a promotion on g1. So here we have rook to c4, bishop to f4. Here we have king to f2, king to d4, rook to a3, bishop to e3, first a check. Really beautiful move, because if you take, of course, then we promote and the king gets deflected from the defense of the rook. So that's why king to g3. Now we have a promotion of the queen. Stockfish pushes the pawn further, promotes a new queen, and here after move queen to h3, in this game it was of course a beautiful checkmate. So really very wild stuff. I'm not sure what to say about this game. I've never seen something like this before. Such a beautiful central pawn storm from the beginning. So Stockfish sacrificed the piece in an early stage of the game, and then we have seen Stockfish also sacrifice the rook for the bishop, which was really incredible, but let simply the pawns rolling, and it was really one of the best games that I've seen in my life. So okay, what to say? If you want to see more about Stockfish 15, and if you want to see more of these beautiful chess games, check out my commented chess games played by computers. I'm going to watch now the semi-finals between Manchester City and Real Madrid in the Champions League. I hope you will watch it too. I think it's an incredible match game. I would like to see also a little bit football and similar stuff, so I'll watch now the game, and I hope you enjoy also this game. So as I said, if you want to see other games from this kind of stuff, please check out my commented chess games played by computers, with really some Immortal games that we have covered so far. So here's the link, and have fun. And if you want to see also maybe some other games, check out my commented chess games played by humans, the best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.